Thanks everybody for coming here. I really appreciate your interest in all of this. And as we proceed today, perhaps there are some of you who either have judged before or this might be something that you're interested in getting involved with, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we proceed through today. One of the things I want to, before we get started, is ask you if you do have a binder and you have the sheets. We will be talking about those a little bit later. If you don't, they are available. If you go to this session, there's a PDF download. It's kind of small on your phone, but I'll also have some samples up here on the screen so we can do that. So I wasn't sure about, come on in please. I wasn't sure about the size of the room and how flexible we would be today. So I was going to have you do kind of a little warm-up activity. How many of you warm up with your bands at school? Not obviously, right? So I'm going to warn you, we will be possibly moving around a bit today. If you feel a little out of your comfort zone, that's good, because your students probably feel out of their comfort zone. When they walk into class on the very first day, there's a little anticipation. I promise, though, not to make you have to sing or dance or anything by yourself. Everything will be fine. You'll be safe. What happens in 224 this afternoon will stay in 224, even though he's videoing the whole thing this afternoon. Okay, so this was one of the things I was going to do, but we're going to do it a little differently. Just raise your hand if you are this. All right, that's the first thing, by the way, relax. Being a judge is to be visually aware. So you read the sign and you indicated and voted there. So that's a criteria for being a good judge. Anybody in this category? No music administrators. Okay, that's great, because if I had those up on the wall and said go to that, then no one would be standing underneath that sign. Anybody in this category? Future or new band directors? Okay, well, that's good. This helps me take demographics here. Anybody in the other category? I promise not to put your... Well, with those three who have their hands up, you want to share in your context? We have someone from Australia. Did you know that? Yeah.
I would be a drumline instructor.
Okay, so yeah, well, it's kind of not a full-fledged band director, but an important component. How about you?
Newly elementary. I was band director for 15 years.
Excellent.
Now I'm elementary and designer now.
Very good. And?
I do visual, feet, and design, but I actually teach social studies at the high school.
Okay, yeah, so you're an educator. All right, that's great. So we know kind of that most of us are in that band director mode, or we've all had experience with that. To get you started, though, I'm going to ask, I remember I said get out of the comfort zone. I'm going to ask you to do something right now. Everybody stand up. People who are up here on this side of the room, you look across there. People who are on that side of the room, you look across here. I want you to make eye contact with someone you don't know, okay, or someone you'd like to get to know. All right? And then I would like you to just cross-pollinate here, but move around the room, because we want to kind of go around the perimeter, find somebody that's new to you, so don't partner up with somebody that you already know. If you go back here, just be mindful of this camera, but let's kind of just spread out in pairs around the room with somebody that you don't know. Okay? You got about 10 seconds to do that.
I just finished up. Next to nothing. About an hour and a half. Where are you from?
Do you guys, if you move over that way, we'll get this bigger group to move back a little bit. Oh, no, that's fine, because we're odd numbers. So, was this a new guy coming in? Maybe we'll partner up. Okay.
Yes, I have an assistant. He's the percussion guy.
Okay. And thank you. Thank you. So what I like about band directors is that you automatically knew I was going to ask you to introduce yourself to your new friends, get a chance to find out. And did you find out where they were all from and what they're doing in a short period of time? Good for you. That's another thing that's important to be a good judge, is to do things quickly and efficiently. So thank you. So here's the plan for this afternoon. We just did what I call a grounding activity. We kind of formed a group here and started to think about what our friends are all about. We're going to talk a little bit about theory, but not in the context of music theory, so I don't have to worry about that. There will be no triads or intervals or anything like that. But we'll talk about the theories behind judging and really what it takes to be a judge. And then we're going to put some theory into practice. We're going to have some samples, and we'll kind of do some rating, and we'll talk a little bit about descriptive language that we would use as judges. So we've already done this part. Among us are band directors. Let's move on. I want you in your head right now to complete this sentence, okay? And you're going to share your thinking with your friend or friends in the group of three, okay? All right, go ahead when you're ready. I wish more judges would.
I was thinking,
Additionally, the verbiage that they use.
Did you have something? Did you have something to share? Can I call your attention over here, please? Respectfully call everyone's attention over here. So I just made them really nervous by saying I'm going to call attention over here. You don't actually have to share if you don't want to. But if you've got one, what do you think more judges should do?
Mine was that I wish they would be more specific on how to correct something that was wrong instead of just a tick tape.
Anybody have anything similar to that? Okay, how to improve rather than just being critical and saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
All right, anybody got anything wildly different they want to share?
Mine was just that when they were talking on the tapes, to make it not only friendly for the staff and the director, but make it friendly for the kids.
Kid friendly, right? Because it's really part of it should be part of the education process. You've obviously done the heavy lifting to teach them something. You've put it out there. You've taken a big risk putting it out there. So how can we support what you're doing as judges, correct? Okay, let's take another prompt here. Here's a different one. My band never, or seldom, gets credit for. Now, this is being very autobiographical, thinking about your band. What do they seldom get credit for? Okay, share that. You got about 20 seconds to do that. Thanks.
Was that from a judging standpoint?
mine, I mean, it kind of comes at the same time, like middle school, I don't do much of the marching idea, but I know that we really never got credit for I guess like when you think of it, you only perform 10% of what you think you're performing, kind of dynamic stuff like that. So we never got credit for all of the phrasing that we worked on in festivals.
I was going to say something very similar. The pervasiveness of our
Yes.
talent is not to a level that.
And let's be ready in 3, 2, 1. Okay, whose band isn't getting credit for, and what for? Anybody got something? I heard you guys talking it up a storm.
We said basically, he said the pervasiveness of the musicality, essentially how much you've focused on the music and how the phrasing and everything goes, but you really only perform half or less of that, so it's hard to interpret to the judges. But although we've worked on it so hard, it's never really getting credit.
Good point. Anybody have anything similar to that or different? Yeah.
We say like the band never gets credit for when the band's taking the field, they don't say, taking the field to this band, and this is their budget. And you say, wow, they did all that with that.
So it is challenging that you might be in a situation where you're up there with the bands with the big budget, huge school district, etc., and all things seem or are being presumed to be equal, and they aren't necessarily. Yes? Thanks, Patrick.
Tagging on that, from a small band perspective, credit for doing what you do with what you have.
Right.
because you may have 10, 15 horns on the field that are playing amazing, but because you can never get to the press box with 10, 15 horns, then you're never given the credit for doing what you're doing with 15 kids, because those 15 kids all have to play. You know, versus some bands where you have larger groups and there's some kids that's just holding the horn.
So similarly to this, in a way, making the most of the resources you have, whether it's money, staff, facilities, enrollment. We've got a school here of 3,000 versus how many at your school?
60 per class.
Yeah,
7
really
through
small.
12.
Okay, pretty small. All right. Okay, we could gripe about the judges all day long, but we're going to move on. But I want you to do this final one and try to do it in. It's a lot of fun. This is your chance to get even, right? I'll take it back to BOA for you. Okay, so this is a chance, this one, to think really concisely, though. Finish this one, finish this thought in as few words as possible. And again, you get quick share with your friends, and here we go. Greatest frustration with competition. Now, it could be some of the things you've already said. Go.
So in Missouri, we don't have a seizure.
Okay, let's look up here. Who's got a frustration they want to share? Competition. Any frustrations with competition? We're all cool with it? No one's got a frustration? Okay. Oh, he's got one. Go.
Just a small one, it had to do with, we're preparing for the competition, so when we sometimes not building the skills we create or bands or groups, because we kind of jump the gun into the competition.
Right. It sometimes forces us to teach to the test,
Right.
and we may miss some important parts. Now, I'm Canadian, so if I say process versus process or the opposite, you'll understand, right? You'll know the words are the same thing, it means the same thing. Yeah, so sometimes we skip steps in the learning growth curve, and as a result, just to get to the end. Yeah, any other frustrations?
The student perceptions, we talk about, quality performance, we talk about trying to get better, we talk about that, but when it comes down to the contest, we didn't win and somebody else did. The kids get more focused on the number than we want them to.
Yeah, and it's hard to frame that in a very positive way, isn't it, as teachers sometimes, when the kids get wrapped up in that. So that's an important part of your role as preparing them for this. Did you have one back there too?
I did.
Yeah, thanks.
Sometimes it seems like some of the ones we went to in previous years where we weren't being scored on the rubric, we were being scored against bigger programs. Instead of just how we did, it was how we did compared to that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're pretty well warmed up. Why don't you say thanks to your new BFFs and go back to your seats, and we'll continue on with the rest of this. So, like any good educator, I had some learning goals for you today. All right, I have 3 of them. By the end of the session, I hope we'll be able to describe some of the elements and principles of pageantry judging. That sounds all really fancy, but basically, you'll be able to know inside out how at least the Bands of America fall judging system, and a lot of other state organizations, and even Drum Corps International, use something that is very similar, use a very similar approach. We will be able to use the criteria to determine a scoring range using the judging system that BOA does. And I'll play a few examples and ask you to say, where would you score this? Okay? And then we'll also apply this, these two are very similar, in not necessarily a live demonstration. However, some of you might be coming over tomorrow. We're going to talk about visual judging with the Carolina Crown demonstration group at the stadium, and on Thursday with the music side of things. And Friday night, if you're going to the contest, you get to see 6 or 7 drum corps, and you might think about some of the stuff we talk about today and say, I might give that a 70-something, and then see what the judges do and see how you compare to them. So you could apply it in a live or simulated situation. So how do we do this? First of all, I want to just share with you really quickly, how many of you have ever participated in a Bands of America regional or competition? All right, so you're familiar with the system that they use. So who has never? Australia probably never. All right. Now, somebody said something about the criteria for our state isn't, it's very not clear and so on. I will tell you that one of the reasons I'm involved with Bands of America is I think that the criteria is geared towards student support and it's geared toward educational support. Even though it is competition, the language, and especially in the new sheets, it's framed in such a way that it's going to be really clear for the educators and the students to understand, yeah, this is what I need to do to get to this level in terms of a score, as far as the score is concerned. So we have the terms subjective versus objective. I'll tell you from years of experience, I've been doing this a long time, it is not possible to be totally objective in a judging situation because we all have our own baggage. We all have our own musical experiences, our own pageantry experiences, and we can't remove all of that when we're looking at something. In fact, it helps inform our decision making, and the more experience we have in either teaching, participating in pageantry, the better informed a judge we will be. So it's good to have a lot of, I'll call it good baggage, as opposed to, some of the things that some of you were implying, and we'll talk about what happens when a judge does have those. Okay, so there's our learning goals. New for 2017. We've got revised judging sheets. You have copies of all of those. Philosophy remains the same. Only the judging tools, the sheets, have been modified. So the descriptive philosophy for how you judge for Bands of America, that's all stayed the same. And it's a new look just to simplify the process. What is it? How do you say it? Process. Okay, I got it right. Okay. So they have a new appearance, simplified rubrics, updated language, recalibration. The reason I asked if you participated in BOA before is if you had a music sheet, either the individual or the ensemble, you would have noticed there were 3 categories, 3 subcaptions, one for each of the voices in the band. The woodwinds, brass, and percussion. Those have now been assimilated into all. It's music. It's not just the percussion or just the woodwinds or just the brass. So, and that happened on these 2 sheets. So they're down to 2. So here's what they used to look like, and here's an example. Woodwinds, percussion, brass, okay? And here's what it now looks like, and you have a sample of that. So you'll see we're talking about basic sound. Now you go, well, intonation in the percussion, yeah, timpani's got to be in tune. We also have tuning of the drums themselves. So, yeah, because you're the percussion specialist, aren't you? Where's the percussion guys? Yeah, right? A drum can have a tone. And we want to make sure that they're matched and that they're in tone with each other so that, because it can affect the clarity. It's all about clarity, really. So this is sound stuff, and this is skills, technique. And also including, in a sense, if you look at like dexterity, facility, they're general terms that will allow you to talk to the percussion or the woodwinds or whatever voice has some sort of special moment that demonstrates those skills. So this is the judge who's on the field, okay? And now there's just 2 boxes, nice and clean. On the back, if you recall, somebody talked about criteria. So these are the broad categories, but what was the criteria like? Well, on the old sheet, it looked something like this, and I deliberately made this fuzzy. There was a lot of words back there. Yeah. I mean, you can't see what all those words were, but that's the old sheet. There were a lot of things, and so you're the music judge, and it comes to the end, and you got to go, okay, let's see, the drums sort of did this, and the woodwinds were here, and the brass was over here. We had to kind of go and find all of that. Now, we look at it this way, and look at these guiding questions. To what degree do the performers demonstrate this? Solid fundamentals, okay? Awareness of intonation, tuning. So you're really thinking holistically and musically. And I think for the judge, that's going to be very easy, and especially for the directors. When you reflect on, you got a score of 75 or 82 out of 100, because that's what this subcaption is worth. So this is worth 100, and this is worth 100. And you can ask yourself the questions. To what degree do the performers demonstrate this, this, and this? And then there's a degree that they do that. Do they do it rarely, infrequently, sometimes, usually, or always? And when we rolled this out just a month or so ago, some of you might have got an email from James Stevens about it. Somebody has asked the question, well, really always? Is there any group that performs with these qualities and these traits always? Because that's like being perfect, really, isn't it? So if you're judging, you're using always as a relative term. It's like, this is the group that does it the most, really. And even within there, there's degrees of almost always, right? So there, there, and there. This would be always right there. Except no band is going to play always in tune. I defy you to find one. and ask them to do it more than once. Like for one moment they might, but through the whole show for 11, 12 minutes or whatever it is. Okay, so that's basically an overview of the new system. We're going to come back to some of those sheets a little bit later and try something with them. Now, you like Ohio State? I could have put up the dinosaur, it could have been whatever we wanted. They're pretty cool. By the way, one of the bands this week is being conducted by the band director at Ohio State, Russ Mickelson, I think. Anyway, go check him out. He's an amazing, you'll learn a lot if you can get to one of the rehearsals. Micklethwaite, that's it, Russell. All right, which sheet? Or caption, which caption? Now this is like asking a test with the answer sheets right in front of you. You can go flipping through, but without looking, can anybody tell me? Yeah, it has to do with effect. That's why I put the big cat face up here for you to just get an idea, okay? And I just wanted to show you a quick sample of the effect sheets. Because in the old system, this creativity and imagination was not only on general effect music, but it was also on general effect visual. And now in the new system, they've actually changed it a little bit. Not too much, but I'll show you both of them. You'll see that there's a slightly different terminology. I referred to Drum Corps International and Friday night's contest. In DCI, there is only general effect. There is no GE music, GE visual. There used to be, but now it's one. So those judges typically are looking at the entire show. The emphasis in Bands of America is on music first. And so more points are allocated to the music captions than they are to the visual. In Drum Corps, it's 50-50. And that happened a little while ago, probably actually back in the year 2000 when they went to this system. So it's 50-50 with DCI, 60-40 with BOA. So you can see this part we're talking about what's written. This part is talking about how the performers elevate the written part. Does that make sense? So coming back to some of your concerns about judging, the big programs versus the small programs, if you have a very well-crafted show for your small band and they present it very well, they could conceivably get a decent score. Are they going to have a full range of expression? Who knows, right? With electronics, we've seen opportunities for a lot of that to happen. In fact, this week, one of the great things at this symposium is there are a number of sessions on dealing with the small bands. And if you're in that situation, you may want to go and attend some of those. They talk about, well, how do you get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, to use that expression. Okay? All right, so that's general effect music. This is general effect visual. And we're ready to do some moving around again. Actually, we can probably do this at our tables. Because we're in pairs, we just need to maybe, if you can move over there with you. Yeah, Mike. Sure. Then we'll have two at least at a table. Joe, you're on your own. We'll talk. Okay, I'm going to put up an image here for you. Two images. I'm hesitant to turn lights off, but just in case you go to sleep. Let's try this one. And does that affect your video? No, okay. All right, just so you get a little sharper image. So I want you to look at these two. And for you, do you ever watch Shark Tank? Yeah, you know Lori Greiner, when when they make the deal, she goes, for me, she always does that. Well, for you, which one would be a ping versus a pong, okay? And define your own criteria. Why did you say it was ping or pong? And then explain your rationale. Okay? So, have you got one in your head? Which one do you think is ping, right or left? Which one is pong, left or right or left or right or left, whatever? And why did you say that? Share it with the person that's closest to you and have a conversation for about 30 seconds. So you help out through the year as well, or typically just in the symposium?
For the past few years, I've just been done Symposium, but I volunteered at Grand Nationals before. This year, I took the band to Grand Nationals. So,
Oh, great. Which school is it?
Clovis West High School.
Okay,
We
yeah.
semi-finalists this year. So
Yeah, good for
I
you.
just assist. I wasn't leading it, but hey, we did a great job.
Yeah, great.
So I am trying to get more involved, but just moving to California kind of put me on the other end of things.
And where'd you go to school before that?
University of Illinois.
Okay.
So I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, so not too far away from here.
Yep.
So my high school always went to Grand Nationals. Never did anything big, but always had fun with it. So
Good.
it's great.
Great. Excellent.
But it was much more simple. Pain makes you think of more like
Okay, looks like you got an opinion you've shared. Now we'll do first a straw poll, and try not to change your opinion based on, well, most of them thought. Let's see, how many thought this was ping? Okay, so that means the rest of you thought this was ping. Okay, good, so it's kind of 50-50, yeah. All right, anybody got a rationale for why this one might be ping, for the people who just had their hands up? Yes, please, Patrick.
The word ping sounds much harsher, more angular, and that was a much more angular, harsher picture.
So in these images, you see some angles that look pingy to you. Okay, let's stay with this one first. Any more reasons other than what Patrick shared? Mike?
Similar as the vowel, the I thought about linear versus the O, the one on the right has a lot of circles and shapes like that, but the I has a lot of lines, so that's why I thought it was pretty.
Okay, good. Anything different than that? So the people that thought this was ping, what were some of the reasons for that? Yep.
I've kind of the same idea. Ping is a much harsher syllable, but I thought the harsher would be colors and what pops out, because the one on the left seems to kind of same coloration as a lot of natural things, but the one on the right will not be natural. It's very vibrant.
The brighter colors ping for you. Anything different for this one? Yeah.
No, you go ahead.
The sound of the word ping pong. If you say it together, the inflection of ping usually goes up and pong goes down. So if you think of something that has like a higher inflection for color, then I go for the one on the right.
Okay, good. For a few years in my career, I worked for a government agency. It was called the Ministry of Education. Sounds really official. And we revamped the curriculum. We didn't come up with standards and leave, whatever that thing is, all the kids behind sort of thing. But we came up with a way of reframing thinking about teaching music and arts, actually all of the arts. And this was actually one of the activities that we shared with the elementary arts teachers as a way to prompt students creative thinking before they engage in an arts activity. And did you notice, I like this because you became judges, but you weren't being judgmental. The question I asked you wasn't, which one do you like? Which one would you hang in the hallway at the house or in the bathroom or whatever? But more, I asked you to think of some criteria and descriptive language. When we are judging, that's typically what we want to be doing. It's being unfolded in front of us, and we need to be able to respond to it. We need to be able to describe what we're seeing and hearing and even feeling about the performance and about what the students are doing. So this is, I think, a great activity to help prompt judges to sort of get get started with their descriptive language. In the next little few segments, we're going to talk a little bit about what is the descriptive language of a judge. Now, you have the words that are on the sheet, but I will tell you, if you only read those words as a description of what's going on the field, or in a concert festival, same thing really, then what's going to happen after a time is you're going to run out of words, right? Because on Friday night, you're going to see some amazing groups, and they all have a different way of presenting their material. And so you want to be able to respond to their unique character by having a bag full of words that you can use, synonyms perhaps, that would be descriptive terms that would support your decision making. And as you discuss what's going on, it also informs where your number is going to line up, whether you're giving lots of positive comments or, as somebody inferred, only identifying the mistakes, because that's the easy one. It's easy to listen, go, it's out of tune, not together, their feet aren't together, they're not lined up, and we can all pick on that stuff. The one that somebody mentioned is about how do you support them, or how do you describe their effort, their what we call achievement. So in BOA, in MFA, and in DCI even, achievement is key. And we determine that through the use of this criteria reference system. Remember that one rubric I put up there that was all muddy and so on? There used to be a lot of words in the rubric. Now the criteria reference system now has been pared down to the real key essential words. And that's the most easy way to achieve, as judging team, uniformity, so that we all are working from the same basis, no personal biases, have to leave those at the door, somewhat a degree of objectivity, and try to be consistent. In the summer, I administrate over 100 judges at 130 events. And you can imagine that in a very highly competitively charged environment like drum corps, that the odd time I get a call from an unhappy instructor or director, it's usually about some odd number that comes out of nowhere. And that's, for me, I call a red flag. You know, this judge on that particular night obviously felt something different. So we strive for consistency, but if you are the corps or the competing unit that's ranked in the 4th or 5th spot, you don't want consistency. You don't want to stay in 5th spot. You want to go up. So you want opportunity. And that's the other thing that we talk to judges about with the drum corps, and I know that Gary Markham also talks to the BOA judges about. Be willing to react and respond. So that guy that I said or gal might be the red flag. In fact, they might have been the only one on the panel that really got it that night. So we talked to the judges about not just looking at a recap that's posted online and using the same score that your friend gave the other night. Different stadium, different weather conditions, different night, different performance. They might have put in a new change, new ending, blah, blah, blah. All these things apply, okay? So in our system in BOA, we give value to both what and how. It's the product of these two elements. Content is the what. What are they being asked to do? Whether it's a small band or big band, okay? Are they only playing chorales, whole notes? Now, some could argue that that's very difficult too. If you're playing really slow, long, sustained music, that's not necessarily easy. However, if the whole show is that, they're not going to get a lot of content in effect because it has a lot of sameness to it. Unless, you know, well, they do chorales from every era. I don't know how that would work. But the other determining thing, the how, is the performance part. What the students are doing. So this is what has been written for them, and it has to have certain characteristics. It has to have some tests, if you will, of their range, of their skills. I don't mean range, high range, but the range of learning. Okay, and that's why I think we've evolved to the situation we are, where, and you see this in the concert world too, the band music just is getting more and more complex. Even the easy band pieces are more complex than they used to be. I mean, you can still get the 0.5 grade beginning band music, but you know, grade 2 and 3 music is starting to push the envelope a little bit. So, and why? It's because we're trying to get them to expand their musicianship and their skills. And how well they perform it is very important. And those two things added together equal achievement. I will be, by the way, submitting this PowerPoint afterward to MFA, and they'll put it up with all the learning materials. I didn't do it in advance, but it will be there so you can access it afterwards if you want it as a reminder. And this is important, and this comes back to the point somebody made about small bands, limited resources, so on. It's recognizable at every level of the performance. And we want to reward that when it's really substantial. But it's not only about playing hard music. You can do really hard music poorly and you're not going to get credited for it. If it's not clear, it's difficult to tell if it's high-level content. You know, is it really written, or are they just kind of making it up as they go along? So keep it in mind. Don't encourage your friends to just do really difficult music. All right, let's get back to doing a little activity here. So communicating as a judge is important. We're going to think of synonyms for the word achieve. Now you can put it in the right tense: achieving, achieved, or achievement. But I want you to think of the word achieve. And can you think of another word that could be synonymous with achieving as far as music is concerned? And write it down. Try to think of one. Or you can do it on your notes on your phone. You can write it down on a piece of paper. Type it in. Okay? If you got one, can you think of another one? Is there anyone willing to share their idea? Because it might prompt the thinking of somebody who's stuck. Anybody got one they're willing to share? Mike?
I have accomplish and execute.
Accomplish, execute. Anybody have those two? Okay? If you just heard those two, add them to your list. Anybody got any others? Go.
Attain.
Attain. Attain, like attainment, attaining. And
Succeed.
Succeed. Great. Any different? Go. Popcorn.
Mastered.
Mastered. Yep.
Reached.
Reached. These are all the words you're going to keep for your next judging gig. You've mastered this. You've reached this. You've attained a high standard. So we've gone beyond just achievement, but started to think about other ways of achieving. Because achieve, what is that, right? Okay? Any more? Now, I cheated. I did a little brainstorming, but I just did the synonyms in my dictionary and found all of these. Okay? I like some of these. Yielded. This performance, or this moment, yielded a wonderful effect. It was the culmination of all of these things. You've garnered. Where's garnered? It's up there. A high standard of consistency. Completed, shaped, crafted. I like craft. I'm using crafting a lot lately, especially with the concert bands. This is very well crafted in terms of how you approach phrasing and expression. And you know, in pageantry, I think some of these words are way more applicable. Because we kind of, with all of the visual emphasis, there's a lot of fabrication and construction going on. There's a corps this summer, if you get a chance to see them, from Canton, Ohio, the Bluecoats. They have this enormous prop. It's like we've had props before. Last year, that was kind of their trademark. Actually, they're the champions from last year. They had these giant slides, and this year they got this 8-foot tall, 10-foot tall stage that goes from the back to the front. It's unbelievable. So if you get, that's what I would call a fabricated or constructed effort on their part, okay? Now, in musicality, it's, constructing phrases or fabricating phrases isn't a complimentary term, but we certainly want to think about it. Some of these words apply more to the achievement of the effect, perhaps. Some of them apply to the achievement of the musicality or the expression. Okay, Now we talk about the students demonstrating their achievement. So what are some ways, now you're teachers, most of us, okay? What are some of the ways that the students in your classroom demonstrate their musical achievement? Did they perform? Yes, that's one. That's the obvious one. Okay? Can you think of any synonyms for demonstrate? And then, yeah, we'll go. Let's add these to your list. Go.
I'm sorry, exhibit?
Exhibit. Okay? Exhibit A. B-flat concert scale. Yes. Did you have a different one? That's okay. Exhibit. Show. Illustrate. Exemplify. Present. Absolutely. Those with computers are getting on there and finding the synonyms. Here we go. There's a few more. Express. Especially in music, we should probably hear some expression of their achievement. They've accomplished something. They've implemented. You know, the percussion often, well, I don't mean the implements that they play, but over time, the construction of the music, they start to implement a high level of skill development. Okay, so we've got some fancy words. We've got a sheet with some commentary on it. If you have the GE sheet handy, take a look at it. And you can be either GE visual or GE music right now, whatever you prefer. Or you can be overall GE. And I'm going to have to just switch gears to find this website here. Well, I've got it up, but we're going to listen and watch a group performing, and I want you to think about effect. And what can you say about this? Is that up on the screen? What can we say about this? Okay. Here we go. Let's just go to the website. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Think about the effect of this performance. The drill doesn't change, so we'll just stop it there. All right. Gotta love those Japanese bands. That's at the All Japan Marching Band Championship. Usually there's 100 groups over 2 days, 50 and 50 on each day. And they come like that, one after the next, and they're all pretty decent. They're all very similar. But they also do, the drill is very similar to what you just saw. Okay, so if you're talking to them about their effect, what might we say? Of the two subcaptions, which one do you think they're most proficient in, or they've achieved perhaps the most in? What are you going to say? Music. Yeah, music, okay. And then of the subcaptions on the music sheet, is it the effectiveness of the repertoire that they're playing? Did they make the right choice choosing Carmen? Well, probably because of our friend on the oboe there and all the other double reeds. Anything? You're sitting there. You're judging this. What kind of positive comments are you going to make? What complimentary things are you going to say?
Excellent balance with the woodwinds.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Technical proficiency.
Very technically proficient. They have good skill set.
Good contrast.
Okay, there's lots of contrasts and what kinds of contrasts are we hearing? Dynamics, good. Phrasing, style, articulation. When you're assessing your individual students for grades, are you assessing them on these characteristics? Absolutely. You already are judges in a way. And I know some of you probably already judge pageantry events, but if you haven't, you've been doing it all along. In fact, you probably did it when you were a student. When you were in university, you would play a piece and you kind of record yourself and listen, and you make that self-reflection, that self-evaluation. So we're constantly, as musicians, evaluating what we do. And that skill is something that will help you to become a neutral observer and an evaluator of groups like we just saw. How about the visual side? Say that was at the championship for whatever, and you're sitting there, you're the visual judge. What are you going to say?
Good consistency of technique.
Okay, so their movement was, they definitely demonstrate, just like in their music, they had good technique.
The how was very good. The what was very basic.
Yeah. So they become, after, and it goes on for a long time. They just march around the square in that formation. Sometimes they come down, then they do a counter march. Now, I will tell you, I've traveled around the world, and in other countries, they really don't do as much as we do here in North America. And you'll notice that was an indoor facility as well. There are these, what they call show bands, but for all intents and purposes, they're smaller stage marching bands. And they have them in South America, all over Asia, in Europe, and they have a range of, like they've got groups that are playing and you couldn't even recognize the music. They're that bad. But then they've also got groups like this that are off the charts in Thailand, over here. China is starting to get into this big time too. Taiwan has a number of them. And you know how they learn to be, how they've learned a lot of their skill or their design stuff? They rip it off by going to YouTube, and they go to the BOA broadcasts and the DCI broadcasts, and they just watch that, and then next year, that's their drill. So they rip off entire shows. Any of you ever heard of, met Gordon Henderson before? Do you know who Gordon is? He's UCLA, he does the marching band at UCLA. And Gordon and I were judging in Malaysia once, and a band came out and started playing the show, and he leaned over to me and said, I wrote the show, but not for them. And they had taken the music and the drill. Somehow they got it, and just and they're ripping off uniform designs. You'll see people that look like the Cavaliers or the Cadets. You see them in all these other countries with hand sewn uniforms. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the art and science of judging. I just want to impress upon you that if you want to be a judge, realize that like being a good teacher, it's something that evolves over time. And there are learning stages. We start with the apprenticeship. I referred to this already. You were a student at one time. And that's where you learned your insights. That's what you learned about music. Everything you learned as a student is important to help you as being a judge. Is it important to help you as being a teacher? Absolutely, right? All of your musical content is there. You got that in the back of your head. Then, as a teacher, you actually, by teaching or instructing, some of us have very focused instructional capacities, some of us handle all of it. You've learned a lot of things that will help you to be a good judge. And then there's the first few years of judging. Now, I'll tell you, for DCI and also for BOA, you don't just graduate from university and then all of a sudden get thrown into judging. Okay? For you to be a DCI judge, you need to have had some judging experience already in state band associations and that sort of thing. And then you have to go through a whole trial process, do some commentary. We want to listen to the commentary while you're actually at the event. So last Thursday, we had opening night in Indianapolis, and we had a couple of people that were there doing trial judging. And then we have a team that listens to those, and actually my judge training coordinator, Lee Carlson, is one of the clinicians here at the Symposium, and he handles all of that for me. So that's one less responsibility I have to worry about. You should strive to be a master judge, just as you strive to be a master teacher. An artisan, if you will. Believe it or not, you can be really good at judging. You want to be the person that everybody wants you to come and judge their invitational. Not only do you make some money, but you also have a lot of fun. You get to meet some different people. You get to travel all across the country, around the world. So, it can be an interesting sideline to your teaching. But it never reaches an end point. Any of you ever go to the Midwest Band Orchestra Clinic? Any of you ever go to your MEAs, the Music Educators Association? Right, you're going for professional enrichment, ongoing learning. And just like we want our students to continue to pursue their learning through life, it's the same thing as a judge. And how do you get better at it? Talk to your colleagues, Not so much about what score did you give them, but I noticed you rated so-and-so higher than I did. Help me to understand that. I'm not questioning you, but I'm curious. I didn't think this was as strong. And sometimes just having a conversation helps you to learn about it. Network is the key, okay? And then finally, becoming the artisan should always be the goal of the master judge. Now, I don't presume to make it sound like, or say that judging is easy. Sometimes it's confusing. And it really does have a lot to do with what's going on up here. What frame of mind you are in, how focused you are while it's all going on. Sometimes, if you go to a super regional for BOA, I think there's something like 60 bands in those things. Actually, at championships, it's like 80, 90 groups. Now, they break the panels up. But I talked about Japan. I did the All Japan twice. 100 bands in 2 days. And they're coming like this. Their shows are short. They're like 5 minutes long. But yeah, you do like 20, and then there's a quick break, and another 20, and it's crazy. And you've got to make these decisions really fast. And it's way more complicated. So having a clear brain. I'm going to ask you this. Some of you might have seen this exercise. But this is actually what we sometimes see or hear from bands. It's interesting, huh? You're able to read it and make sense of it, even though it's all jumbled. This is the key. First and the last letter are in the right place. This is what bands look and sound like the first time they go out on the field with their show every fall. It's all jumbled up like this. By the end of the season, and drum corps too, by the way, by the end of the season, it comes out a little bit clearer. Now, the director, you have a vision of this. But seriously, what happens when we start out is sometimes it's like this until we figure out who's going to stand where, who's going to play what, and all of that sort of thing. My point about this is that sometimes as judges, we also have to be careful not to fill in the blanks. When we judge concert festival, we have the score there. We can see all of the notes, and you would think that that is actually helpful for you to be able to tell if they're playing or doing the right things. What I found through a little bit of incidental research, and we don't have like high level of research, but any of you are going to graduate school, you might want to get interested in this and find out if judging with a score helps or hinders the process to be a neutral observer. Because when you see the notes, you know as teachers, sometimes you think it sounds a lot better than it does. And then you record them. And then you go, oh, yeah, we got to do this at rehearsal. Record your rehearsals all the time. Record your band, marching band rehearsals with video, okay? So there are some certain factors that impact on judge development. Here's one. Something called the halo effect. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute as a separate piece. Influence. You might hear this expression. If I don't rate this group higher, Director X might not invite me to be part of right? So you're worried about influence. Reputation. That band has always won their division at state finals. Yeah, so what? This year they're not as good, right? Be prepared for that. Reputation, I said that. Am I on ego now?
Yes.
I'm going to show this director once and for all that I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, never have ego as a judge. That's the last thing. You want to leave that at the door. Distraction. I've judged this, I've been in this situation where there's a band on the field and there's a carnival going on the back side of the stands with fireworks and a Ferris wheel and all of that. It's easy to get distracted. Be careful. Experience. I'm not sure I'm quite ready to be judging Grand Nationals, but I'll give it my best shot. Are you really, do you have the experience to do this? Are you ready to do it? And if you are, jump in. Go all in. You'll be great at it. And then you can add anything else that can affect judge development. Let's talk about this halo effect. It's a fallacy of concluding from a perceived single positive trait of a person to the conclusion of a generally positive overall assessment of that person. So, this is true. Research shows this. So if we had a good-looking person come up here, you might go, they're smart, until they open their mouth. Oh, just kidding. People skilled in public speaking are assumed to have other desirable traits. Oh, he's such a wonderful speaker. I bet he'd make a great CEO. Yeah, he might be terrible with finances. You don't want him or her in that role. So, in band, the halo effect can lead to other preconceived notions. They have beautiful uniforms, they look so magnificent, they must be wonderful. They're always in the top 12. How could they be any lower? Well, again, could be having a bad year. My fellow judges think they're really great, and they have a terrific color guard, so they must play as well. There is no St. Vitus Dance Academy. That's some sort of a shaky malady. But anyway, the director had great success. She must be doing the same here. You can never make those assumptions. This whole thing about halo effect is that what I'm suggesting to you is as judges, we have to forget all of that stuff. You have to be your own person. You have to make your own decisions using those sheets that you have, the criteria. Okay? These things can also affect a judge. This is you on the way to the show. Breakdown, you're going to be late. And the whole idea is when you're making an assessment, when you're making a judgment, you're thinking about what's going on. I love this quote though. There's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. When you think something, you're making that determination. And that's important. You have to make that judgment. This is old William Shakespeare. This is the new one here with the New York Yankees. Okay. So the best way to do it, or to learn about it, is just to do it. Have you heard this expression before? Tell me I forget show me, I'll remember. I've been showing you some things. Involve me, I'll understand. In a minute, we're going to try a little experiment so that you can actually get involved and try it. But before we do that, I wanted to talk to you about something I've come up with. I call it the PTSD, and in a very positive way. When we are judging, remember that not all things are created equal. So you want to use a PTSD approach. Anybody think they know what the letter P stands for? That's it? Post, okay? Yeah, it's not, this has nothing to do with post-traumatic syndrome. Okay, yeah, positive, okay? When you hear a group that is having struggles, they're really challenged by what they've been asked to do, your immediate response might be to identify the errors, because I'm going to play for you probably one of the worst bands I've ever heard in a festival. I don't even remember what this group was now. It's a concert band, all right? We're going to play just a few moments of their playing, and you'll get the point really quickly. I've actually used this with my education students before, where I say, you're just moving to this new school. This is the band you've inherited. What are you going to do? Where are you going to start? Because I want to see if they've learned anything through the year in terms of what is, how do you build this program? How do you get it back? Okay? So, P is positive. T is trust. If the first comment you make is positive, you've started to build trust with the performers. And no matter how struggling the group is, if you can find something positive, you're going to get their trust. And then you can then support their development. So it's positive, trust, support the development of the group. All right? Now you could come up with any acronym you want, but I talked to my judges this year with DCI about doing the same thing. So let's exit this for a second. Hopefully I can switch to iTunes. I've labeled this bad bands because I don't know what the band is. I apologize. But it was at this festival. You can hear me judging, right? You get the idea. All right? Now, kids were up there. They were into it. They were playing. They were having a great time. What are we going to say on our recording? What positive thing might we be able to say that would encourage and support their growth?
They're using a lot of air.
There we go. First thing out of your mouth. Great. Love it.
They're very confident.
Confidence. Confidence is great. Confidence is high. Good use of air. Any others? Energy. Enthusiasm. Yes. Yeah. And if you can do that right away, now you've got their attention. You've got their trust. And then, what might be some next steps for them? How can we support their development? What are we going to say? Okay,
Continue pushing the air through the note.
okay. We can describe how to use the air. Somebody, maybe it was you, was saying you wish the judges would talk a little bit more. Was it you? Yeah. Talk about how to help the students, right? Anything else we could say? This group, a lot of it's about air, for sure. Okay. We can't see them, but can you assume what their posture looks like? Probably. So posture might be another thing. And, in marching, we might see the same thing if they were out on the field, so on. Could we help the director?
Confidence as a group, so asking the kids to look up.
Okay.
Give their director the attention.
Yes, good.
Tell them, letting them know to look up the breathing gym exercises or something.
Great.
Some pedagogical materials.
To learn how to control air, correct? Yes. Yeah. Great. Anything about timing? I mean, the reason I think they're slowing down is because they're just so heavy and they're trying too hard. It's not light enough, not buoyant enough. But you might have to say to the director, well, think about using a metronome, getting the students to think a little bit lighter. Talk about blending sound together.
Might be in drum major issues, so if you could say something to the drum major and how to improve their downbeat, or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've now supported their development. We've started to do that. Out of the gate, if you started talking about the, blasty, out of tune, difference of tone and all of that, they're going to be less interested in hearing the rest of your recording. So let's be enthusiastic for them and then help guide them along. So yeah, I said things like, find the groove, great tempo, you show independence, taking a risk, those are just some things there. And then these are some of the things you were talking about, importance of error. I think I use these terms with a different example, but.
Now it's time to refine.
Very good. Yeah. It's like, I talk about the creative process, and in that, you use your imagination to come up with an idea. So your show is like this. If we were talking about a design thing, yeah, it's a creative process. You've got this idea, and now you need to revise and refine it to make it even more clear for your audience or your listener. You always sort of put it on to somebody else. You're doing this not for me, but you're doing it for the pleasure of the audience or the listener. If you can do this, it'll be even more interesting for them. You'll get even more reward for it, more success. Okay. So now we're going to go to the other extreme. We're going to look at one of the drum corps at the DCI finals from last year. This is the Cavaliers from Rosemont, Illinois. And we did this exercise with the DCI judge training in May. So on the sheets we have these categories. Now, the fact that I just told you this was at the end of the season will probably give you an indicator of where they might be, like which of these achievement boxes they might be. But I want you to think of this performance either from music ensemble, okay? So the music sheet, that's the ensemble one. So you can assess both the winds and the percussion. Or if you're visually oriented, think about the visual ensemble sheet, okay? And you don't have to give them a whole score. You don't have to give them an exact score. Which box would you put it in? And which third? So you can see how there's shaded areas. We call it the lower, middle, or upper third of the box. All right. Skip over to here. Don't fail me now, technology. Use scoring-specific commentary. Okay. Now, as you are listening and watching, because you'll get to see this, look at that sheet and then jot down a few words that come to mind that are on that sheet that will help you to come up with a score. So you want to look at the back of the sheet. When we judge, judges always start with the back of the sheet first, those prompting questions. To what extent, or what does he say, degree? Yeah, to what degree do they demonstrate? Okay? And look at the performance captions. We don't need to worry about effect here. Okay. Here we go.
I urge the Soviet leader, Mr. Gorbachev, to send a new signal of openness to the world by tearing down that wall. That wall. That wall.
That's enough. Okay. I don't want to get political here. Okay. Perfect performance? No. Got some issues. Any particular words that you might have pulled off of the sheet to describe what you were hearing or seeing? We don't have the visual one up here, but yeah. There's no wrong. By the way, have you noticed that the entire session, there's no wrong answers here, all right? Whatever, it's all about how you're assessing and feeling at this point. Yep.
The balance of the voices, you could mostly hear everything despite the fact that they were in a wide spatial arrangement most of the time.
So there's some reasonably good clarity because of the way they're staged and the way it's orchestrated in different voices, all right? And I like the fact that you identified how they were sort of all isolated in a spread. Is that something that the judge wants to reward as well? The environmental challenges? Absolutely. We talk about 3 dimensions in achievement in terms of the content. The musical responsibilities first, okay? Things like tessitura, dexterity skills, intensity levels, stamina. I mean, all of those challenges that you might encounter. And there's more, many more too, expressive playing. We talk about the physical responsibilities. You notice the trombones doing all that, stuff, that choreographic gesturing and so on and so forth. Taking some risks there, because if dude doesn't duck, he's got a slide wrapped around his head, doesn't he? Okay? And then we talk about environmental, because you'll see with the drum corps, they spread out across the entire field, and they take huge risks. Big bands have the ability to do that. Small bands, it would be pointless to have 15, 20 winds stretched all around the field. All right, but they can do different things to demonstrate their challenge. So good. Any other commentary? Yes, please. Thanks.
There was some tone in the low brass, then it went into the mellophones, and spreading of the tone that was affecting the intonation.
Yep. Yeah. So there was definitely some, and one of the mellophones really had a clam right there at the beginning of that attack. But think about the tessitura. Think of the range where that was pretty exposed and way up there. Yeah. So definitely some tuning things we would talk about. Anybody want to talk about percussion? Did you know some of the technique they were doing, like single stick things that were transferring between players? Yeah, playing and megaphones and all that stuff. Yeah, again, different kinds of challenges. Cavaliers are really known for those sorts of things. One year, they hung people upside down and they played their instruments. I mean, they held a pole and the trumpet players were upside down playing the trumpets. I mean, it was kind of a gag, but it worked. And they did a marimba feature a couple of years ago. It's become one of those things that, they might get some effect for it, but it's also physically challenging to be able to play like that. Any other comments about what you saw or heard? Yeah.
I wrote down sonority, just kind of what he was talking about, the spreading of the sound was pretty apparent, especially as they were trading high voices to low voices and the little hits here and there. It was not the same sound going through. So there's a lot of different, not necessarily issues, but improvements that could be made.
Sure.
With the sonority there.
So they were challenged by the challenge, and challenged to be consistent in their musicality. Now, were they to stop and play a Bach chorale, you might be a different sonority. This particular feature was, I believe, to demonstrate a certain, if you saw the whole show, and then of course they bring out the political statement at the end, but it was all about this conflict in the world and the challenges. And they talk about things all the way back to tear down the wall, the Berlin Wall, and all of that sort of stuff. So sometimes what they're going for effect, they might suffer a little bit on the performance captions. But it might have been very entertaining, very engaging for the audience, and therefore they're going to get the points in the effect caption. If you can do both, you got a good chance at being really well, okay? All right, so remember, to be a good judge, participate in your personal growth, studying, understand the philosophy of the system. You all have that now. Develop the skills at every opportunity. Do you know what critique is? Anybody ever heard that expression? Do your band competitions, do you have a chance to go talk to the judges afterward? Okay. I think as directors, if you have that opportunity, that's a good opportunity for you to also put yourself in the place of the judge. Like, why did they make that determination? And rather than challenging them, that's a good opportunity for you to ask questions. Can you just help me to understand, you mentioned this about that, the particular feature that we did. Help me to understand how we can make that better, or do you have any ideas about it? Use that as a chance to build what you're going to do with your kids, okay? Collaborate with other learners through a consistent partnership. These are all things that I asked my judges to do, and Gary Markham asked the BOA judges to do as well. And be fair and balanced, open to all styles. Try to get rid of your personal bias. These are the things for the judge manual for Bands of America. Be professional, rank the bands in the assigned caption, so don't go out of caption. So if we were judging the Cavaliers there, we couldn't go into effect. We had to stay in our performance caption, okay? Rate the bands in the assigned caption. We talk about ranking and rating. This is the most simple way to think about judging and coming up with a decision. You got 10 groups, okay? Who's first, who's second, who's third, who's fourth. I went to Columbia a few years ago, and they said, you're going to train they called them jueces. I believe that's the Spanish word for judge. And so there were these young gentlemen, some of them were like 21, 22 years old, and they were the judges that were going to continue on in Columbia. So I had to kind of think of a way to explain this to them, because they didn't all speak English that well either, and my Spanish was not very good. So but we came to an understanding. I said, okay, just first group comes out, put an X there, okay? And that's your starting point, whatever that score is going to be. And then the next group comes out. Are they better or not as good? Okay? So now you've got some ranking going on. And then you can go and put the rating in. If the first thing you do is go, oh, that's a 93.2, you're really restricting your ability to make changes as you go. Now, BOA and DCI have changed a little bit in the last few years, where the judges can actually change their score throughout the event. So if you're participating, you go on, and it's to your advantage that they can do that. Because if you go on really early, you're hoping that the judge remembers you. And you need to do something in your show that's really special that they remember. Oh, that was the one with the stage, or the singer, or the whatever. I'd say fireworks, but they're not allowed inside. But you've got something that's unique, and then the judge can remember that. And what the judges do is keep notes. First group out, the blue uniforms, played this music, and, great soloists, blah, blah, blah. They put down notes about the real positive things and issues. And that's what we relate back to, okay? So we can, it's part of what we call the comparison process. There's 3 stages: impression, analysis, and comparison. Your first impression, then you analyze, oh, is it in tune, out of tune, together, da, 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 and then later on make a comparison to the other groups. So you rank them and rate them, and then that'll help you. These are 3 personal skills that will help you not only as judges, I think, but in your teaching. Can you make a decision? Do you have an understanding of numbers? And can you communicate? And we didn't get a lot of practice at communication. We talked about some of the words, but really think about it. If you've got 10 groups and each one is playing 10 minutes of music, you've got to communicate consistently for 100 minutes about what you're observing and what kind of an effect that is having on you. And so these skills, abilities, and your knowledge are really important. So we'll have a chance when we go see the Carolina Crown at the stadium, if you're going to be over there. You'll see this on Friday night. Or you can, actually no, this is tomorrow is visual, and Thursday is music. Bring your BOA. We're going to be seeing them in segments, but they'll do their whole show, the Carolina Crown. So, you can practice your hand at that. They won't be in uniforms and so on when they're doing the rehearsal thing. But on Friday night, you get to see all the groups perform, and hopefully the weather will be cooperating. that's been the skinny. I kind of give you an overview, new system, think about some things, do a little bit of practicing, and now it's up to you, the next step, if you want to go. And hopefully that today you learned a few things that might be new to you. And if you have other questions, you can email me at my DCI email address, dci.org, just J. Phillips with 2 L's. And I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. If you see me around the rest of the week, you want to talk to me one-on-one about any of this stuff, feel free to do so. Thank you so much for this. Do you have wrap-up comments, or we're done?
Just please give feedback. I'm sure if you agree with me, I think you did a wonderful job, so give him a round of applause if you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And